Intertalk Radio, you're in to all things music.
Welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
Welcome to Intersect, powered by the Intertalk Radio Network. I'm your host, A-Train, broadcasting from the Intersect studio here in Nashville, Tennessee. We have a great show today. Today we're actually doing part 2 of last week's show with Professor Dave Perkins. But before we jump into that, I'd like to say thank you to the folks at Pitbull Audio and Studio Instrument Rentals, major sponsors of the Intertalk Radio Network, and to all the guys at Innovative Percussion here in Nashville. They make really good drumsticks, folks. Go out and get some. Even if you... No, go out and get some anyway, yeah. So, Dave, how are you over there, man?
Good afternoon. I'm doing great.
Good, man. That's good. I'm glad you came back to finish up the story, and I'm looking forward to it, and I know the listeners are as well. So before we get into it, I just want to recap a little bit. We started a journey with you last week. We started in Philadelphia on South and 4th, and then we ended up in Georgia and parts of Georgia, Macon. You were eating a lot of soul food in Macon. And then you went to, if I get this wrong, then you went to Nashville, correct? No, you went to New York.
Woodstock, New York.
That's right, Woodstock, New York. And from there, you went to Nashville.
Then I went to Nashville. Then I went to Austin. And then you went back and forth from Nashville to Austin. And you had to eventually rest in Nashville because you and your wife started having a family. So yeah, and in there we were about 5 years in New York. So in New York City.
That's right. In New York City. That's right. So what I want to know before we jump into your being settled in Nashville, I want to know what your lifestyle was like doing all this traveling from city to city, bands, and meeting all these great, iconic musicians and traveling and that sort of thing.
My lifestyle?
Yeah.
You mean, did I have any bad habits?
Well, if you did, please share those.
Well, it was a great time. A lot going on, all kinds of, I think a lot of us have those times in our lives where it just seems like everything's going your way. And, back in those days, it seemed like it was. I was, getting, lots of opportunities to play as you just, as you were just about to say, with, some really great music makers, some of them well known, some of them completely unknown, but still fantastic. And, and that is a pretty intoxicating sort of time of life. You know, you're young. You know, I was in my early 20s and then up into my mid 20s, and getting to meet and play with people that I had been, you know, a fan of.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, it's that. So it was a great time. It was also a dangerous time. One thing about living on the road when you're in your 20s is that it's a fairly unrealistic lifestyle.
Mm.
You forget that, you know, there are many people who get up when they're supposed to in the morning and go to do a job, and their lives are fairly structured. And you know, when you're out on the road, you're sort of disassociated from much of, I guess, what people would call regular life, and
yeah,
you know, you just sort of lose track of what's real and what's not real, and you think you can do things with impunity. You know, drink what you want to drink, smoke what you want to smoke, and everything else, and you know, it all sort of becomes part of the landscape that inevitably becomes what is real to you. That becomes reality. And
right.
It's, you know, sort of living in a dream world in some ways. So yeah, and you know, I guess one of the things in my life now that I look back on is, you know, how in the world did I make it through those times without, you know, succumbing to my own stupidity and my own immaturity. And one of the things that I remember is my grandmother. Every time I saw her, she would say that she was praying for me. And I, you know, sort of chuckled and shook that off. Thought it was nice, of course, but didn't put any strength to it. But you know, when I look back on my life and, you know, chances that we took and stupid things that we did, and you know, you wonder, man, how did I make it through? And I have
right.
I have many friends from then who didn't make it through. Many who basically died of rock and roll. But maybe it was because of my dear grandmother, you know, saying prayers for me. But
yeah. Man, I tell you, I had so many moments where I would find myself in a place, and you know, remember that song "Mama Told Me Not to Come"?
Yeah,
it would be playing in my head. You know, I'd be scared to death, you know, and I had to get out of there. But yeah, I knew my mom was praying for me. I knew that. I was confident of that. I didn't think of that at the time, but reflecting on life after a while, you kind of, you know, realize certain things and how certain people played a part in your redemption and just saving you, you know, and I'm so grateful for a praying mother. So what did you, you know, and I asked you this question, and I appreciate your transparency, because when I was first doing an interview for Florentino here at Intertalk, you know, I realized that, you know, there was a difference in my whole outlook and everything after salvation. Prior to that, you know, I was just going along with the flow, you know, like you said, back in those days, and you and I are very close in age, it seems like things just came to you without trying, you know. I was always gigging. I always had a gig. I never looked for it, you know. It was just, things were just coming, and I would just go with the flow, and going with the flow of the people I was with, you know, just smoking, drinking, partying, staying up all night. Yeah, I had no, you know, I hadn't experienced waking up to go to a job either. So I guess that's a story for a lot of musicians who are of our age.
Well, it's part of the, it was the lifestyle, and it was all attached to, that thing that we all wanted, which was to be, a successful music maker. Mm-hmm. And, after the Beatles played on Ed Sullivan, everything changed, A lot of people sort of, marked that line. It was different for, a lot of people, but, so if you were interested in being a popular music maker, the scene was, the scene that went with it was, caustic. It was, quite often hard to survive, and,
mm-hmm.
Whether it's, surviving it physically or mentally or psychologically, spiritually, whatever you want, it
mm-hmm.
it could, it could get you if you didn't, sort of eventually sort of know where you're going. And I think that's the thing for me, is that my perspective changed, and is still changing,
mm-hmm.
but I often don't know what to say about my own faith and religious beliefs. It's morphed so many times, and every time it morphs, it makes somebody mad.
Yeah.
Somebody will. I will not be able to have conversation in that area of in that subject matter without making somebody angry because I don't believe one way or another. But it's been a journey, and but the I think the thing for me, and I gave a talk in a class not long ago on this, about how, for me, I think one of the things that attracted me early on to music making was the sort of the spiritual essence, or the spiritual DNA that is involved with making, maybe making any kind of art. I don't know, but for me, it's music, and so the two, the pursuit for me has sort of been, I guess bilateral. I'm pursuing them both. I have a strong sense of pull toward things spiritual as I do toward things musical. I have always tried and been driven to evolve as a music maker, and at the same time, I've always felt an urgency to evolve as a spiritual being as well. And the thing that's so wonderful for me is that the two really have gone hand in hand with me. And, quite often when I'm doing one, I'm doing the other. Mm-hmm. So did I get off beat?
No.
lose your question? I'm sorry if I did.
No, but I like to interject something here. You know how a lot of musicians would follow their heroes and whatever their heroes were doing and the way their heroes were living, that's the lifestyle they chose to live or try to pursue. Take, for instance, jazz saxophone players. Charlie Parker was the guy, but he was also a heroin addict. And a lot of saxophone players followed Charlie down that road. Rock and roll musicians, the successful rockers, were usually high on coke and marijuana or whatever. So, that was always around. But I had there was a time where my musical heroes got clean and started to meditate, started to pursue spiritual things. And I followed them down that path. I was meditating, and that freed me from, got off drugs, stopped drinking for a very long time, and but it also isolated me a bit, because there was a part of me I thought, I was better than the other guys who were drinking, smoking, and cheating on their wives and stuff. But it's just interesting, how life works out, and one thing led to another, and I'm glad it happened that way for me. But yeah. Well, I
remember those days. There was a sort of a rise in consciousness at a certain point. But you mentioned saxophone players. One of the things
Dave, hold on to that thought. We got to go to a commercial break here.
Okay.
And we'll be right back, Dave. And people out there in Radio Land, we'll be right back. Thank you.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pitbull Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pitbull Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pitbull Audio can help make it happen. We are Pitbull Audio. We want you to play it loud. PitbullAudio.com.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Hi, I'm Tim Dolbear, the host of Sound Experience on Intertalk Radio. Each week, I talk with top professional audio engineers, producers, musicians, and the manufacturers that make the tools that we use in the studio each and every day. From capturing the perfect take to mastering your final release, and the tools and how the pros use them, we are going to dive deep into their process and learn from their experience. I look forward to you joining us each week on Sound Experience with me, your host, Tim Dolbear.
This is Jackie Bertoni from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be the music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
Welcome back to Intersect. It is a great thing to be redeemed this side of Zion. And welcome back, folks, with my guest, Professor Dave Perkins. And just before we left for commercial break, we were talking about how musicians in particular follow their heroes and their patterns, their lifestyle patterns, some way, thinking that if we maybe emulate that, we'll get to experience some sort of creativity or success, the same as our heroes did. But anyway, that doesn't always happen, does it, Dave?
Well, no, not always. But you were talking about saxophone players, and
yeah,
I was just going to follow up on that to say that, you know, I did have a sort of epiphany or supportive moment when I saw John Coltrane's record of Love Supreme for the first time. And the music has, you know, grown on me to be one of the sort of the major themes in my soundtrack. I've never stopped listening to the music, but the thing that first caught my attention was the liner notes that Coltrane wrote for the record. He wrote his own liner notes, and it was, as you know, Aaron, it's a strong statement of spiritual awareness and commitment. And you know, I think at that time in my life, in my journey in music and spiritually as well, I sort of had my nose to the wind, and I was looking for artists that were saying things, not necessarily things that I don't think I was looking for things to believe. I was just looking for people who believed something, so that I could. That would help me locate myself in the music community, in the music world. Yeah, well, I'm like that, or I'm like him, or like them. You know, it was hard to find people, but that Coltrane record was just a life changer for me when I read that, identified with it very, very powerfully, and I think that that led me to some of the people that I think that you probably had in mind when you were talking about meditation. I think not Coltrane. I think John McLaughlin pulled a lot of us, pulled a lot of us in that direction. But
oh yeah, he was the guy.
The interesting thing to me is that came with a certain peak in among people that have been playing rock and roll by then for a half a decade, or so, some for even longer. But there was something happening among those people where we had become pretty good rock and roll musicians, but as instrumentalists, we really wanted to move out into the unknown.
Yeah.
And that's when jazz started to find its way into a lot of our lives, and and I don't know if it was the influence of the black church or what, but I found a lot of stuff in jazz that encouraged my interest in spiritual things, and that sort of bolstered my identity to let me feel like, hey, this is also part of the music maker's journey. A lot of people aren't doing it, but some people are, and as I said, I'm that kind. I think that's sort of what I found myself thinking when I sort of made the turn.
So did you find that were you kind of searching, or how did you get involved in CCM here in Nashville? That's contemporary Christian music for you folks that don't know the language.
I didn't know much about it, but I had what I call my religious experience. Actually, when I was living up in Woodstock, and it sort of went in sputtered along, I guess you would say. I wasn't involved in the church. I didn't really want anything to do with the church. I saw plenty of church when I was a kid, and didn't see myself there. I saw myself on stage, and that was probably it. But when we were when all my band's business started to sort of be located in New York City, we were living up there. I had two small kids by that time, and I think I told you this last week, but I had promised my wife that when our kids got to be school age, that we would, pick a place and settle down. And so we were living up north, but we still owned a house in Nashville, and so we, trying to think, well, what do we do? Do we sell that place down there and get a place in New York, or go to LA, or something like that? But we just decided that Nashville was going to be the place. So we came back to Nashville, and I had been writing songs. I had been trying to figure out how to write a really great rock song that was also sort of a travelogue of my spiritual journey. So, I started writing these songs, and there wasn't really much to compare it to, because I didn't know anything about, contemporary Christian music. There wasn't much of it then. But when we came back to Nashville, a couple of friends that I knew heard those songs and really liked them a lot, and wound up giving them to some artists, and they, contemporary Christian music artists, started to cut these songs, and and as they started to cut the songs, they started to, people at the record companies started to show me interest, because I came out of a sort of a genuine rock music place. Had some good notches on my belt, and so and Christian rock was just sort of starting to happen, and that's really how I got into it. They started throwing work at me, and I started producing producing records and, writing songs for people. And, it's funny. When I first got involved with it, I thought, wow, this is what I've been looking for. This is the greatest thing, to be able to go out and make music that rocks as hard as I want it to rock, that is as nasty and bluesy sounding as possible, but is also, very, very much, the content of it is very spiritual. I thought it was the greatest thing, but I, sort of dove in, neck deep, I guess. And it wasn't too long before I began to realize that it wasn't really exactly the place for me. And I, struggled with certain aspects of it. I started to have, difficulties with the sort of the commodification of religion and faith. And, there's nothing wrong with making art that is informed by one's worldview or faith, but there are sort of iterations of that get into some areas that make that worldview or faith just another commodity, just another thing to be
right.
to be sold. And I worked with a couple of artists back then that I think that really sort of took a toll on their spiritual lives. It's sort of, I don't know the right word. I don't want to put words in their mouths, but it sort of changed things for them. So I saw pretty quickly that I was really not cut out to be sort of a thoroughgoing contemporary Christian music artist.
Right.
I never did a record there that was the kind of religious or spiritual statement that they would have liked to have seen.
Yeah.
But I got to work with some really amazing artists that were just world-class talents, as good as you get anywhere, for anybody's money in terms of songwriting, singing. I mean, who sings better than Russ Taff? Not too many people. And, and I guess the thing I would have to say about contemporary Christian music is that I met some of my lifelong friends. There are people that I'm still very close to, and so it gave me that gift, and I'm not sure what I gave it, if anything, other than trouble, but it was, it was just sort of a journey along the way. But oddly enough, it sort of prompted in me an interest, more of a sort of a philosophical or sociological interest in, why is this music important to people? What do people get out of it? What do people get out of the people that make it? What do they get out of it? The people that buy it, the people that fight for it, whether it's in churches or in, Tower Records or whatever. And so I really sort of got interested in it as a sort of a cultural phenomenon. And I think as much as anything, although I was a big reader of philosophy, but when I went back to school, first to divinity school and then for the Ph.D., a lot of what I was interested in was that issue of the commodification of religion through music. And so I wrote my dissertation on that, and so that another thing that I got out of contemporary Christian music. Do I understand that cultural niche better than I did then? I don't know, but it is something, and it is a time in my life that, you know, really just like the other times, has its good sides and its bad sides, you know. And I described, you know, some of the musical groups that I traveled in and play in it as dangerous work, and yeah, in some ways, being around any kind of I don't know how to put this without sounding too harsh, but that's dangerous work too. You know, I mean, there are things at stake. There are things that can be won. There are things that can be lost. I guess nothing is innocent, and
right, totally safe.
Everything has its capacity to both you know, give and bless us, and on the other side to you know, take things away and you know, problematize. But I did make a lot of really wonderful friends there, and you know, and even though I wasn't a poster child for what they were looking for in a quote Christian artist, unquote, I don't have any ill feelings toward it. I think I've sort of lived beyond.
This is a good place to pause for the cause of the commercial. But,
okay.
Man, I've enjoyed this segment with you, and this is kind of insight I was hoping to get from a conversation with you. And when we come back, we'll take it up to what's going on with you now, and I'm looking forward to that as well. Okay, all right, folks, we'll be right back after this commercial. Thank you.
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear, host of Sound Experience here on Intertalk Radio. And Source Connect by Source Element is the essential tool that we use to link between my studio in Austin, Texas, and the WS radio station in San Diego. Now, with Source Connect, not only can we communicate in real time and with HD audio, but it's synced up and is of a high enough quality that I can use it for real-time ADR work, remote recording, and overdubbing, and it even allows me to remotely control a DAW. Source Connect by Source Element. Affordable, high-quality audio and video connection over the internet for all of your production needs.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Make this your vinyl night. I'm John J.R. Robinson, and every week, music creation comes alive through stories, experiences, and sounds when vinyl records filled our hearts and minds. My friends and I share our tips and techniques used in creation of iconic tracks for recording artists such as Michael Jackson, Eric Clapton, Quincy Jones, and Steve Winwood, to name a few. Vinyl has emerged hot, and the soul of vinyl defines art and passion which burns deepest at night. Tune in every Wednesday.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pt.2 Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pt.2 Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pt.2 Audio can help make it happen. We are Pt.2 Audio. We want you to play it loud. Pt.2audio.com.
Welcome to Intersect Radio, where music, faith, and life converge. With your host, Aaron the A-Train Smith.
Seems so long, you've been carrying that cross all by yourself, and you don't see how you can take it. Truth be told, we each live in a house of cards. Yeah, and it don't take much to shake it. Stand when your stars don't fall, when the darkness calls, you were meant to be. Stand when the world is a lie.
Welcome back, folks. That's my guest today, Professor Dave Perkins, and great songwriter, great guy all around, great songwriter. I've had the privilege of doing a few live gigs with Dave and quite a few sessions over at his studio and seen him work and do his thing, and I really appreciated the experience, and sometimes I wish we could go back to those days and with the insights we have now and maybe do things a little differently. But you know, I look back on those times with you, Dave, in the studio and the gigs we did, both recently and in the distant past there, as being like very, what can I say? I was honored to be a part of your band and part of those experiences with you. And thank you for the phone call, baby.
The honor is mine. Thank you for doing everything that we've done together. It's always been my pleasure to have you in the mix.
I appreciate that. Okay. So we were, you had mentioned your dissertation, the commoditization of contemporary Christian music. That's very interesting.
The commodification of religion through music.
Okay. Of religion through music.
Yeah. I mean, there, you can sort of say it in a number of different ways, but that to me is, I think that's close to the language I used.
Mm-hmm. So going to divinity school, man, how did that happen? How did that come about?
That was. I think you have to sort of paint that with the same brush that everything else was painted with. As I said a little while ago, a sense of drive to evolve, to excel as a music maker, as a guitarist, as a singer, as a writer, and also to evolve as a human being.
Mm-hmm.
That evolution is is very much an interior project. I guess I would say it right now. I mean, you can prosper yourself physically. There comes a time in your life where you can't really do that anymore, but you can never run out of room in your soul, in your mind, and in your I would say spirit, for that journey to necessarily come to an end, like it does with our bodies when we reach a certain age. And And I think, deciding to go to school was a part of that, whatever that drive is that I've felt and that many other people feel also to push forward, like there is something, like there's something calling us, like there is someplace to go that we have to go, someplace that we're destined to go. And, I looked for it in many, many places, as I know you have, but, in the religions, I guess, I was born into Christianity, but I didn't always espouse Christian belief or worldview. I looked at other religions, and I, looked at different kinds of churches. I looked at different kinds of meditative practices for myself, and I think deciding to go and study was maybe as simple as another version of trying to chase that thing, trying to answer that calling that I've felt since. And I think the first time I was conscious of it was when I was 11 years old, and I had something happen to me where I really sort of became what I would call God conscious. And so that has been sort of troubling the waters of my life ever since. It's one of the it is one of the dynamic factors in my life is that I'm chasing the big something. Whatever that is. I can't tell you. I mean, I wish I could. I wish you chase it for a while and you know what it is, but I'm not someone who has found the big answer to the big question. I am still walking forward, and I suspect that I always will be. But going to school was a part of that process, and I think music. I think I had, for the time being, played enough music. I wanted to do something else at that level of commitment, and so school, really provided that. And I have to say, and that I really never expected to finish. I thought I was just sort of taking a break from music. But I got into it, and I realized two things. One was that I really loved it. I really loved study and academic work. It was another kind of creativity for me. And then the other thing I found out was that I was good at it. I was more intelligent than I thought I was.
I told you, I've always thought of you as a professor.
Well, I didn't, but anyway, that's the way I got there to divinity school.
How did that change your life? I mean, because you've spent all these years doing music and producing records, and then all of a sudden to go to divinity school, not just go to school, but to go to divinity school. That must have been there had to be a big change and adjustment in your daily life.
It was nothing less than a mind warp. Because the thing that you have to understand about theological education is that there are at least a couple of different kinds. There are places that you go that whatever you believe, they'll paint all the rest of the colors into the picture, or you will through your studies, and you'll come out of it believing what you always believed, and just knowing all of the, everything about it that can be known. But then there's another kind which basically challenges anything that you could believe and throws everything up into the air. And at the end of the day, you've got to figure it out. You've got to.
Mm-hmm.
It's a major quest for a lot of people. In fact, there's early on, one of my teachers gave me a phrase that stuck with me and that I now pass on to people in my class. And the phrase is this: theological education is a burden that you never get rid of.
Mm.
and at a place, like where I went to school, that was the tone of it, and it's that way not because they are anti-religion or non-believing. There are many fine believing and non-believing people in those institutions.
Mm-hmm.
But at the end of the day, I think that the beauty of it is that if you're preparing for religious leadership, if you're going to stand up there in front of people and tell people what it is, what the nature of existence is, what the nature of the relationship between divinity and humanity is, that has to be a really hard-won sense, belief. Not something you were given at birth and schooled in, and therefore you always see the world through those glasses. No, the glasses sort of get taken away, and you've got to figure it out, whatever it is, on your own, and then you are at that point empowered. But it's tough. Yeah. It really is. It really is strenuous.
How do you teach that sort of? How do you teach that sort of insight through your class in music? How are those two things married together?
Well, the classes that I teach are not just music related. They are sort of arts related, broadly, because that's, much of my doctoral work was in areas like aesthetics, philosophies of beauty and art, and I don't teach confessionally.
Mm-hmm.
I don't create a situation in which I then step back and point at it and say that is the truth.
Yeah. Okay.
We have a very diverse student body. We have people that are God interested, but they come from many different compass points on the on the map of religious thought and practice. Certainly every iteration of Christianity, and we have Buddhists, and we have Muslims, and so the question is, how do you teach? I mean, there are some courses that are very obviously Christian content courses.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
My courses are more arts and religion. I sort of take note of what students are in the class and what their degree is. Are they an MDiv student? Are they getting a Master in Divinity and they're going to, go into church leadership? Or are they an MTS student and they're doing a master's to prepare for a PhD and they're going to teach? So, I have to make the class palatable for all, and it's not, it's not always easy, and I hope I'm getting better at it as we go along. But
cool. Well, Dave, there's the music, man. There's that horrible music.
Okay.
Thank you so much for being on the show.
My pleasure.
I appreciate you, brother. And thank you, folks, for listening in.
This is Jackie Pt.2 from Jackie's Groove. Come join me weekly on my journey through the music business as I take you behind the velvet rope, interviewing industry notables such as Al Di Meola, Michael McDonald, and Al Jarreau, to name but a few. Listen to their stories on being in the studios recording #1 hits and onto the stages throughout the globe. Allow me to be your music historian. You can hear me live every Monday at 2 p.m. and every Wednesday at 12 noon Pacific Standard Time or 24/7 on jackiesgroove.com. Ready to get your groove on?
Hi, this is Tim Dolbear from Eclectic Studios. I'm a full-time mixing and recording engineer. I work with Grammy winners, labels, and indie artists, using state-of-the-art digital mixing and restoration tools and the very best in analog gear. Really, though, it's my ability to bring tracks to life and fulfill your vision for your music. This has made me sought after by producers and artists worldwide. So spend your time working on music and not chasing a mix down a rabbit hole. Go to timdolbear.com and check out our free one-song mix offer.
You know what's all around you every waking moment of your life? Marketing. You're choking on it. I'm Scott Robertson, and when it comes to strategic PR, branding, and marketing, I've seen it all. And actually, I'm still seeing it because bad marketing never sleeps. Join me each week on May the Best Brand Win, right here on Intertalk Radio, and learn how to make the marketing for your brand unforgettable.
Are you serious about your music? Are you ready to run with the big dogs? The experts at Pt.2 Audio have the gear to get you into the game. From leading manufacturers like Mesa Boogie, Fender, Pioneer, and American Audio. To sound your best, you need the best. Pt.2 Audio can deliver in rehearsal, on stage, and into the big time. Dropping beats, shredding guitar, or making the crowd roar. Whatever you dream, Pt.2 Audio can help make it happen. We are Pt.2 Audio. We want you to play it loud. Pitbullaudio.com.